Yeah, just I think further along those lines, and similar to those thoughts, you know, from a personal perspective, or from our community and some of our communities back home, we see the treaty process as essentially an extinguishment process. There is no, you know, personally, I believe in concept of treaty, but this is not at all offering anything meaningful and mutually beneficial, at least on an equitable level. And there's many threats with the treaty process as far as breaking nations apart and communities and families apart, that I think is even a bigger piece to this issue, thinking of back home. And really, I think from the province's perspective and the federal government's perspective, the treaty process is essentially a risk management process, which, you know, in 1990, there was all sorts of blockades throughout the province. There was public support for the First Nations at that time. You had a decline in forestry at that time as well, because of the certainty issue. And then 93, you have the treaty process and a significant rise in the forestry industry, as just an example of, you know, to support the economic risk management component of treaties.
So we do have a small closing that we wanted to do. So we have 6 minutes, and I wanted to get all the people that had their hands up. And I don't want anybody to feel rushed. And I'm going to ask you to collect your thoughts and share as succinctly as possible.
Thank you. My Anglo name is Wendy. My Plains Cree name is Wasia. So I'm Plains Cree and Pict. I don't think 8 Fire was really good. I don't think it was really bad. I think it was important, like everyone is saying. It opened up a lot. And hopefully one day this will be neighborhood meetings, neighborhood discussions with more people like these fine people young minds up here. Because I know there's a lot more out there. And my Anishinaabe friends are not like that either, council guy. But one of the things is that the perspective of where he was coming from is a perspective that's become part of the consciousness of North America and a lot of the Western world in the last 10 years. And that's this whole idea of we're going to have a win-win situation. And people look at treaties as win-win. But I like to say, who said it was ever a competition? Not me, because I learned we work in circle. And that's our protocol, and that's our way. And I invite everyone to begin working more in circle. And us as First Nations, we have to start being more open and inclusive too on our end. And as far as people like Harper and Flanagan and that little old lady, what's her name? Has a crown? They don't seem to like us very much, and there's not much I can do about that, but I do have a couple of words for them, and that's, hey guys, kiss my Mongolian blue spot.
Thank you. And here with the long black hair.
Hello, what's your Angela Code Hussier, Saisi Dene Hesley, Tisa Uli Twe Hotsin, White Horse Yukon Hotsin Chu. My name is Angela Code. I'm Saisi Dene First Nation from Tuduli Lake, Manitoba. And I just celebrated my graduation on Saturday from UBC. My major was in First Nation Studies, and my minor was in First Nation Languages and Linguistics. I'm really happy to be done because it's been a long journey for me. And, you know, being so far away from home, it's been hard to be away from my home, my family, my community, my territory, my language, my culture, everything. It's been hard. But, you know, I'm done now, so I can go back home and I can spend that time there. But I just wanted to say, you know, like, I'm 24, so I guess I'm still young. I'm still youth, and, you know, I hope that my leaders make good decisions back home. And I just wanted to say as a young person that, you know, I'm concerned about the government pressuring our people to make settlements and land claims and deals right away, because when I look at my community, I can see that my leaders, that my people are still struggling, that they're still healing from a lot of the colonial wounds that have been inflicted upon them. And it's a concern of mine. So I hope that, you know, people are patient in the healing process, and that everyone's not pushed into something too quickly. And I hope that, you know, like, we were talking about capitalism and the influence and upon Aboriginal people, and just how it's seen as such a good thing, you know, to build our economy. But it's not our economy, it's the Western economy. And, you know, like, I went to that Aboriginal Achievement Awards a few months ago, and, you know, it was so corporate, and, you know, it was sponsored by Shell and Rio Tinto. And here it's supposed to be a celebration of Aboriginal achievement. And it's an Aboriginal achievement on colonial terms, you know? And so I would like to see, like, Aboriginal achievement on our terms, and what it means to be Indigenous. And, you know, I hope that I do see that. And I hope that people in leadership back home where I come from, they don't jump to settlements to ease our people's pain, because they are in pain. There is a lot of poverty, there is a lot of suicide, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and, you know, like, I hope that they don't jump to quick solutions. And I, for one, want to go home to eating caribou meat and fish and drinking our water instead of getting big screen TVs and big trucks, you know? So I just wanted to say that as a young person. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm sorry I missed you. You were actually supposed to be next. Can I see only the hands of the people who had their hands up already? I missed you last time. Did you have your hand up? Okay. So you, and I remember Ernie, and I didn't have you. I don't want to silence you, but I didn't have you. So, okay.
Hi there, my name's Chris, and I'm pretty new to Vancouver. Just really grateful for all the wisdom that's been shared. And people didn't really touch on the evil of residential schools and the impact on the generations and just the terrible things that were done to the children by the so-called men of the cloth. And I'm just here with a lot of my brothers and sisters from East Vancouver at the grassroots level, representing churches, and I just want to say that we really care. And that's why we're here, but we want to understand how we can become part of this conversation in order to, I don't know, just to be aware of how we can bring restoration or healing, or, you know, just to be present, and just, we grieve and we weep over what happened, and I just wanted to express that.
Thank you. Quick responses?
I'm not sure what you're asking. I'm not sure why you're asking it either. I appreciate that you're here and that you want to be involved in the conversation. And I speak for no one else but myself. But as far as I'm concerned, the churches can go to hell. And in Christianity and the trading of conversions and the reward system in place to do that, like, it's not just the church that is implicated here, it's the government that was providing the space for that to happen, the RCMP for stealing kids, the public for knowing that it was happening and saying okay, and for it being 2012 and us still trying to exist here without getting beat down every day, you know, with still trying to protect our way of life. You know, as much as I...
Shameful, really. That's very shameful.
Pardon me?
That's very shameful.
You can tell me that, sure, that's okay. That's your reality. This is how I feel. So,
You have to blame the proper church. You have to blame the Catholic Church and
I don't have to blame anybody. All I have to do is to tell you exactly how I feel about this. You know, like when it comes down to it, the church is implicated. The people that were in the church, workers in there were implicated. Not all of them. You know, it's not like it's an ad hoc sort of thing where everybody, part of the church was raping little boys and killing children.
it's the Catholic Church.
Was it the Catholic Church? Was it the Protestant Church?
No.
No?
The
The
Catholic
United Church?
United Church and the Anglican Church.
The Anglican Church.
You blame those guys. You don't blame the true Church of God. That's right.
Well, if you wish to see things that way, I'm not here to convince you of any other, I'm not here to convince you of any other reality.
But why does it matter? Like, we have the Creator, they have God. You know, we have our own beliefs. So why do you guys bring the church into it? Forget about it. It's the past.
Yeah, and our communities are still suffering the division of the imposition of Christianity in the first place. Like, we're divided over the basic fundamental what to call God. Like, we didn't have that before the church showed up. So to me, it's pretty basic about where the division comes from and what that translates into my community. My community, we have a church in the middle of the town. We don't have a big house anymore, and they don't want one because it's anti-church, it's anti-Christian, it's heathen. What kind of bullshit is that? That's not correct. So whether or not you're a church goer or whatever, I'm not here to push my beliefs on you. I'm here to try to get some of those beliefs out of our community so we can get back to being Indigenous peoples.
I'm gonna invite everybody to take a deep breath.
Can I just,
And we're right at the end. This is the worst time to end. We still have a few questions that I want to get to, and Kelvin has a closing for us. I don't want to end this conversation, but what I do want to say is, very quickly, we can continue this conversation. This conversation needs to happen. What's being talked about right now, this is the meat. This is so, so, so important. And I have no desire to cut this conversation off. If you want to continue this conversation tonight, you can head to the Library Square pub just around the corner at West Georgia and Hamilton to keep the conversation going. Now, I also realize that might be triggering for some people as I'm reading it because some people don't drink. So I don't know, maybe I'll put it to the organizers to think about some other things in terms of where people can talk about it. Also, you can visit the event webpage at towardsdecolonization.wordpress.com. Now, I really want you to know that I would never cut this off personally, but we have really strict time limitations here, and I want to be honoring the two people who had their hands up also. So before we move on, I'm going to invite everybody to take another deep breath. And Kelvin is also going to speak to that question before he does his closing. So that question or that comment is not finished. But I want to make sure that we get everybody's voices heard.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Wenona's husband and Otis's friend, and with that guy too. I appreciate all the short speeches. I'm certain I'd love to sit with each of you for a couple hours and listen. I really good test tonight. The only thing I want to raise is something that's close and dear to my heart, and that's, you know, not to be so human-centric and not to be so we're the center of everything, because that's what got this world in the mess in the first place. There's a lot of healing to go on, and the healing that we have to focus on is the healing of our land. Our land has curses upon it, many curses from the church, from government, from industry, and those curses need to be lifted and relinquished for us to continue to have what we have today for our future kids. And that's what I wanted to ask you guys is how can we work together to relinquish those curses on our lands so they will be here 7 generations down. You know, one of our prophecies is when the last glacier on the top of Eathlake, the mountain Chiam, is melted, that Mount Baker is going to erupt. That's her husband. You know, so that's one of our prophecies. So I'm thinking, how do we prolong our life and relationship with the land we have underneath us?
Was that a question? Posed as a question?
I'll take that one and just utilize it to combine with the last question a bit. And I think essentially one element or one aspect one of the key components is the relationship building and the connections to be made, whether it's connections to the land and connections to our histories and our cultures. I think those are very key, and I think there's all sorts of connections that need to be made, and relationships that can build a fire that's going to work for us in the future. But in terms of, and I understand and respect where Ian's coming from, and I kind of thought that was going to come out as far as where others can help, and I myself have come this way and that way on the subject, and I personally feel that every voice is needed, and there needs to be discussions in every corner, and there needs to be, I think that's the biggest piece, is have discussions within your at your kitchen tables, in your groups, in your different homes of worship and such, and that I think that will help build the fire of having more bigger and more fruitful dialogue.
Yes.
I guess just to add on to that, I think the point I was trying to encourage all of us, I guess, to take up from that absolutely excellent suggestion that there be more conversations, that we also really try to recognize how difficult it is to overcome our own assumptions and the assumptions that we bring to the conversation. So even when we believe we are interrogating and undermining and transforming our own minds, speaking as a settler ally, what history does tell us is that, in fact, more often than not, many people historically have tried to understand different ways of seeing the world and have ended up somehow shoring up and reinforcing their own privilege. It's incredibly difficult to have those conversations in a way that is transformative. So I don't have a suggestion for how to do that, but I think a first step is to really recognize that if it feels really easy and feels really good, it can be an excellent start, which a number of people have said about the show, but it's not the transformation that people here are passionately calling for.
So I'm a settler, obviously, and I find this quite interesting discussion, and I'm trying to be quick with this. But I want to follow up from what you said. The ACE-5 was all about reconciliation, and I've heard a lot about how reconciliation is not going to work. Okay, I heard it's not going to work with dialogue. I heard it's not going to work with Indian Act abolishing, and it's not going to work with economic development or the economic development. I should know this. I'm a I speak quite often, so I hate microphones. Closer, all right. I don't like the sound of my voice. Anyways, and I also heard about it's not going to work with economic development and the property and the privatization of Indian, unrenewed reserves, et cetera, et cetera. Well, my question is, what if that's all, not enough? What would be enough? So if you had a list of things and you give me the top of your list on what should be done, whether it's, now I got people interested, or what should be done. So should we, recognize nationhood? Should we give back the land? So if I give you one choice, what is it going to be? Okay, and I'm shutting up now.
Thank you. We have very little time, so go.
Recognizing nationhood and giving back the land would be a good start. And this is my last point about the 8th fire, is that the point, and this is one that Paige brought up, is what it didn't show. So you want to see what reconciliation looks like in its messy, gritty, day-to-day sort of activities. You look at the non-indigenous and indigenous relations that are formed in support of the Inca-Dene alliance against the pipeline. Like those in support of the struggle to end sexual violence, settler, police, or whatever in the downtown east side, crystallizing around the Women's Memorial March. Like all of that those are profound practices of reconciliation in all their messy reality that are happening year-round. You don't get to see that when you're looking at these grand state proposals to forgive and forget the abuses of the past or the legacies that are still burdening us or so on. So let's be creative and look where they're happening at the margins in these really proactive, radical, i.e. getting at the root projects out there. And I think that we should see them proliferate and support them and have them endure and have a surviving chance.
I would just quickly add that the other part of that, again, that I take away from studying history is that it's that urge to figure out a solution and really that still contains the desire to control what that solution will be that also needs to go. That's very, very difficult for colonial society to let go of, that really finding space and new ways to really listen to Aboriginal voices and being prepared to act on those, it would be part of something as well.
So we have a quick announcement from Erin before we do our closing ceremony. Hi, Erin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Aaron Wilson, and I'm from Musqueam. That's the first time that's happened at ZEPCA. I'm thankful to the organizer of this event to give me just a minute or two to tell you all about a struggle that we are going through at the moment, and it concerns our land. It's that big L question, and specifically an ancient village site of ours. We call it Cessna. It's located in present-day Marpole, and it's a place where our people lived for over 4,000 years, and it's a place where our people were buried, and it's a place that a developer wants to put condos on and wants to dig up our village site and our burial site. So we have been protesting this in every way possible we've been there 24 hours a day for about a month now, and we would invite you to join us in any way you can. We're there at 1338 Southwest Marine Drive every day around the clock. Stop by for food, coffee, hold a sign with us. And it is 1338 Southwest Marine Drive. And you'll notice it by all the flags and the people drinking coffee and drumming. And basically, we're there to protect our ancestors. So it's a really important issue for us, and it's one that the government has not been helping us with. So please, I brought a petition for those that wish to sign. I'll be somewhere that I won't be disturbing people after this. You could sign the petition and ask me any questions. So thanks again for everything at ZEPCA.
If Eighth Fire, the show, did nothing else in the world, it brought this discussion out into the world. So I want to express my gratitude for all of you for sharing your opinions and your thoughts and your questions. Thank you to the panel. We have some thank you gifts, and I'd like to invite Kelvin back up. We'd like to honor you as well with a gift, and Kelvin has a closing piece that he'd like to share with us. Thank you, Kelvin.
Adela Kostafan. But it's okay. You know, Hemilesta Kikimi Lachos Chachis, Mamliklas Lakoquekunum. There's a number I carry for the rest of my life. It's tattooed. It's 2661. The year I was born and the day I was born. When I went to residential school, that was tattooed into my ear. I shouldn't say tattooed, it was actually burnt into my ear. I carry that the rest of my life. In 1990, my dad, my late dad, carried a year in his year in his date. I should be angry and mad and pissed off, but it took a long time for me to forgive the one person that was important to me. Gigami. In our language, we call it Creator. That's all it was, asking Creator for the forgiveness. Because I was angry for a long time. I was an alcoholic 19 years ago. This August, I'll have 19 years under my belt. I was a smoker till 2 years ago, July, just around my birthday. And I do mean smoke, not wacky tobacco. In connecting history to me is very hard because I was angry at the one agency that I shouldn't have never been angry at, was my mom and dad, for letting them take me away. I can tell you the story. I can tell you the time. I can even tell you the weather when that happened in my village. 28 young men and women were carted off the village, not by a plane, but by a boat. I should be angry. I should be mad. I'm going to give it to Creator. The teachings that my ancestors taught me was never to forget who you are, never to forget where you're from, and never forget where you've been. Today, I stand here, sober and drug-free. That's the word as a foreign elder. I'm 50 years old this July. I'll be considered an elder. An elder in training, they call it. But I'll give you a little history. There's a streak of gray hair that runs down my scalp. That streak of gray hair was gifted to me when I came out of my mom by Creator. When I went to residential school, the first thing they attacked was that gray hair. For 10 long years, They pulled every gray hair out of my scalp. 10 long years. I suffered. But you know what? If it wasn't for the teachings of my ancestors prior to being carted off, I would have never known how to forgive. To forgive. To forgive my mom and dad. And to ask forgiveness from them because of my thoughts. You know, when we talk about that piece of error, our history, mistakes, or whatever you want to call it, you can butter it up if you want, you can lather it up if you want, but it's still a mistake. They incarcerated tens of thousands of First Nations people across the land, across Canada, as well as the United States. They brought in people that almost killed 10,000 First Nations, give or take 100 here or there. And you know, when we come together to sit in this should be here, but it also should be in the communities, so we the people can hear in Chilliwack, Victoria, Prince Rupert. This should be open to the people so they can hear the stories of their communities. I can't speak for Prince Rupert, I can't speak for Victoria, but I can speak for my little village island, Miquamis. And a question that was asked is how can they help residential schools? Is by sitting and listening. Not saying, oh, I'm sorry to hear that, but giving hugs. Simple as ABC and 1, 2, 3s. You know, the old people, or as they're respectfully called today, elders, I call them old because they're older than I was when I was a young boy. They said, never let them dictate your history. And a few years ago, when I was working in North Vancouver, I ran into a history book in one of the schools. And it happened to say Aboriginal history. But it was Aboriginal history by a white government, not our history. That's the meaning of that. Our history is important. Culture, traditions, passing of names, titles. In my family, I'll tell you a little history of my family, where I stand in my family today. I do what I'm doing right here. I speak on behalf of my chief, which happens to be me too, because my mother stripped my brother of his chieftainship and handed it to me in a good way. You know, we have to acknowledge the history. If you look at your own families, you can do it. Your own history, your own culture, what's important to you. With that, I ask you to stand. Take a deep breath. Hold it. Take another deep breath on top of that. You can do it. If a 50-year-old can do it, you can do it. That's your bear. With that, we ask you, Creator, we thank you for allowing this work to happen here on Coast Salish territory. Also to acknowledge our Musqueam relatives who are needing our help. We ask you to support them today, tomorrow, next week, next year. We also ask you, Creator, to watch over the journey home as we leave here. Some of us with good hearts, some of us with mixed messages. We ask you, Creator, to acknowledge each one of the speakers here who spoke on behalf of their department or their knowledge of that movie. I haven't seen it, so I'm calling it a movie. Mind that, but that's me. 45 minutes is a movie. So with that, Creator, we ask you also to acknowledge the public library for allowing us to use this great space, the Coast Salish territory. With that, safe journeys and tlako. That's it.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Kelvin. Thank you.